the Tracer Podcast, your inside track to all things franchising. We provide essential resources for anyone in the franchising world. Let's get into it.
All right, welcome folks to the Tracer Podcast. Today we've got Marty Mazer here from Mathnasium. So Marty, we're going to start off with you introducing yourself, kind of where you've been before here, and then we'll jump in and start talking about Mathnasium. So without further ado, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself here.
Joshua, hey, thanks, and I'm glad to be on your podcast today. I have been in the franchise industry about 35 years and been involved in 10 different brands. And as you can look at the white here, as I'm winding down my time, I thought about what I really wanted to do and what kind of brand I really wanted to be involved in my later part of my career, because I've been very blessed with working with some great brands. I've worked with a company called Jackson U Attack Service in the past. I've been with companies like United Franchise Group. Now I'm with Rourke Capital, which happens to own Mathnasium, and of course 20, 30 other brands. But as I was looking for something that I really wanted to do, I wanted to give back in my assessment in my older life. And I've got 4 grandkids, and I see what's going on in the education space. And I said, the more kids and the more people I can reach out to, not only for growing a business, but helping kids, I'm going to get into something. So I decided to get into the education space of franchising. And I did look at a couple of the other brands, but after I looked at the franchise disclosure document of Mathnasium, it was very evident to me that they had a great formula for success. And so here I am 2 years later into the brand, pretty proud to say that I brought in many people into the Mathnasium franchise already. And I'm very proud to say that we have a wonderful brand, a great system, and a great support mechanism led by some great leadership.
Awesome. Well, it's good to hear that you're kind of pushing the passion, but you're mixing it with, you picked a brand that you believe in. It's creating great businesses for these owners. So I think that's a good intro. Let's start with, what is Mathnasium and what's special about it compared to all these other education type franchises?
That's a good question, Josh. I get that question asked a lot from candidates. What separates Mathnasium from your competition? Well, first of all, let's talk about what Mathnasium is and what we're not. Mathnasium is a learning center, which means we are proactive in what we do. For example, little Johnny comes home from school and tells Mom, "Hey, the teacher said if I don't pass my test by Friday, there's a good chance they're going to hold me back." Well, Mom gets a little stressed out and says, "What do we do?" They become reactive. And they pick up the phone and they start looking for tutors, somebody that they can possibly have cram enough information for little Johnny to get a C or a D just to get past, right? But if that parent reached out to Mathnasium and said, "Hey, our son has to pass a test by Friday," we're going to be honest with them and say, that's not who we are. What Mathnasium is, we're a learning center. We're on the proactive side. That means when your son is done with his test, bring him into Mathnasium. Let us do an assessment to find out where his struggles are. Where can we help them? And then we'll set up a learning plan over the next 3, 6 months to a year to help that child not only reach the goals that he needs to reach, but to exceed them. And that's really what makes Mathnasium different than the average tutoring. Another thing that separates us from our competition, we don't use workbooks and we do not use memorization skills, nor do we give homework to the kids, right? We use a pedagogy approach, a learning and reasoning skill approach, where we can sit down with the child, talk to that child in their language. Talk to them like we're friendly with them, that we're glad they're there. Have fun with them, and get them encouraged, because what separates us naturally is one big word. It's called confidence. We want to instill confidence in the child. That's what really makes us different than anybody else. A child with confidence can go to far extremes.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I actually spent a small stint as a math teacher, Algebra 1 for ninth graders 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. And I think you're kind of hitting on it's a big difference, right? For people who don't understand this, is like, you can know how to do math, or you can like think in math, right? And kids who
Yes,
know how to do math know how to do what's on the next test. Kids who can think in math can take a test 2 years ahead and get an okay grade because they can figure it out, right? And that thought process gets applied to the rest of their life. So
that's correct.
yeah, so I'm a big fan of that, right? Um, okay, so then um, let's keep going here. So talking about starting up the business, right? You guys have low startup costs, right? I believe it's between like 112 and 150. Is that right?
Correct.
So this is a physical location, and most physical locations are much higher than this, right? So how are you able to keep it low? And do you think with recent inflation and stuff like that, your item 7 for this next FED is going to be a lot higher? Talk a little bit about the startup and what goes into that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that's a wonderful question. Let's talk about that too, because one of the most important things is as our franchise fee is about 49,000, the next 60 to 70 is to build out the franchise. And then you need about another 20 or 30 in operating capital. So the most important thing that we really instill here is location. Let me explain the value of location. Value of location is mom and dad want to know their child is safe. When they take them to a mathnasium, they're going into an environment of grocery stores around them or Best Buy, big boxes, right? Big boxes, Starbucks, workout places. We always want to put our centers where we're open to the public, right? Because that creates peace of mind for mom and dad. When the child comes to our centers, they can walk right in the door, mom and dad drop them off, and mom and dad have 1 hour to go do what they need to do. The startup costs are very low because you have desks and you have chairs, you have wall art. That's really what builds out a mathnasium. We're not glitzy, no glamour. It's really simple. The other thing that separates and why our margins are very good from a profitability standpoint is you do not have cost of goods in our business. That means you don't have to buy workbooks. You don't have to buy a bunch of materials that you're going to sell to the kids because that is not in part of our brand. Our brand is the child comes in, he sits down, he goes the printer, the instructor goes to the printer, he prints off the learning plan, and we work on a 4-to-1 teaching ratio. So we have 4 children to 1 instructor, which is very, very economical. But the best part about it is in that process, we're able to engage with the child. We're able to relate with the child. We're able to ask the child, hey, how did you come up with this answer? Okay, so we're able to do those things. So that's what really makes us very, very in tune to a very good low cost business.
Okay, got it. So really all there is getting the chairs, the paint and the carpet, and then because really the in this model, the way that's set up, the owner at least starts as the director. So every other employee is basically a variable cost because you're only giving them hours if you have kids to fill those hours, right?
That's correct. You know, you look at a normal 40-hour a week business, the typical payroll is about 28 to 30%. You know, ours isn't that high because most of your people are part-time working, for the day, working 3 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And so going, still in the early phases here, who would you say makes a good franchisee, right? If you had to pick your top guys, do they have any commonalities in background, skills, experience, anything like that?
Love for children, passion for children, and wanting to help a child. I mean, at the end of the day, when I'm talking to candidates on the phone, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, how much can I make in this business? And what kind of hours do I have to work? And this and that. That to me is not a very good start to this program. What's important to me is that I have somebody on the phone, on the other end of the telephone, that understands that the United States of America is falling behind in this world here. We're number 40 when it comes to math and science. And when I talk to a owner and they talk about, man, my kids went to Mathnasium or my kids went to a learning center, that to me is a great start because we know that there's a passion. And when you have a passion for doing something, profits are going to come right after that. There's no doubt. You follow a system like ours and you follow what we do, there's no doubt in my mind that those people will make sure that they're going to do well.
Yeah, and I think that's a good distinction as well, because there's lots of people who followed their passion and have failed in business, right? But the difference is you guys have 1,000 franchisees, and you
Well, we have 1,000 centers in the U.S.,
1,000
about
centers.
90 to 100 in Canada, and then we have throughout the world. One other thing too that I didn't touch on, it's important. The most successful franchisee follows our system. I mean, that's very, very important because when I'm talking to a potential candidate on the phone and they've got their own thinking, their way of doing something, when I start talking to them about our system and they say, well, why would that work? I don't think I would do that. That's not going to be a very long phone call.
Yeah, and I think like people just don't have a good idea of the scale that you guys have, right? When
Correct.
you have that many centers, there's not a lot of questions, right? It's like it's execution and having the right person in there to execute.
That's correct. And one of the things too that's interesting about Mathnasium is we have limited areas left. I mean, we've been around 23 years. We've got great owners. Mathnasium, technically, we wouldn't really need to bring in another franchisee because we're growing not only externally, but we grow internally amongst our own owners. We got a franchisee that has 60 locations now that's building another 30. We've got a large percentage of multi-center owners that own multiple centers, 20, 15, 10, 5. It's not like we're out looking for owners. We're looking for the right owner. We're looking for the right person.
Yeah, yeah, very good. And then, so let's talk about values, right? So you said, look, they love kids, they want to help the education system, they have a sense of the need. I mean, everything's going to AI and robotics, right? Like kids have to learn math, right? Like there's no doubt about it, right? What other important values should people be bringing to the table if they're interested in Mathnasium?
Well, of course, we do background checks on every franchisee that comes through the system, so we know that we're going to protect our brand that way,
Mhm.
right? So that's important. I think another thing that really separates our franchisees is we want to make sure they're fully capitalized. We're not just going to bring somebody in if they don't have the capital.
Mhm.
So like I said, if you really think about what's going on today in the world, right? Love of the community is very important. We want our franchisees to love the territory that they're in. And they reach out to the businesses, they reach out to the schools, if they reach out to the restaurants and the churches and the synagogues and the mosques, all that, and follow what we teach them, they're going to do very well because it's who doesn't really want to talk about education? I don't want to talk about a tax return or I don't want to talk about a cheeseburger, but I'll sit and talk to you about math and I'll talk about my kid all day long.
Mhm. Yep. Okay. Got.
That's what really separates us.
So it's again it's that right person who's gonna be out in the community who loves math, who loves kids. So let's say
Yep.
we've got the right person. They've got the right territory. They've got the capital. What's this startup going to look like for them if they're getting going in a Mathnasium?
I always tell people when I talk to them, see that? I got a hand on my left and a hand on my right. It's called hand holding. We have a new integration team. When a franchisee comes to when a new franchisee signs on the bottom line to become an owner, to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. We have probably one of the best support systems in place. We have a great, great team of support. So let me tell you a little bit about what a new owner goes through. First of all, when a franchisee comes to the system, they are going to work with what we call a franchise support person, an FSS. They're going to work with that person. They're also going to work with another person that we have in our system named Ashley, and Ashley's going to help them in regards to getting the checklist from the time they find their location to getting that center up and running. Another great thing that we offer is we have a gentleman that works with us, doesn't charge anything to our franchisees. He goes out and he looks for the real estate in the territory. He knows exactly what we want. He knows the 12 to 1,400 square feet that's available. He's going to go in there and try to negotiate as much free rent or free T&I, as much T&I he can get. And he's also going to work on what he can get the landlord to do in regards to building it out for him, right? So they've got real estate help. They've got integration help. They get a lot of hand holding. So that person's going to succeed right from the beginning if they follow our system. About 6 months down the road after they sign, they're going to open up. So from the time they sign their lease to their franchise agreement to signing their lease to going open is about 6 months.
And so where in that 6 months, if someone has a job, are they going to need to quit if they want to go full time?
No. As a matter of fact, Mathnasium is one of these brands that as long as we know you're in charge, we know you're responsible, and you understand, and that's our job to make sure you understand is when you buy a business, it's not easy to start. So you're going to have to be engaged and be involved until you find that team. I always tell, that's me. I always tell people, look, if you want to be an absentee manager, we're not interested in really doing a franchise with you. We're not looking for investors. We're really looking for somebody that's hands-on, but also wants to maintain their job because they still want income and health insurance. And that's fine with us. And if they want to be multi-center owners, that's fine with us too.
Okay, great. So that full 6-month startup is you're saying they can keep their job. Are the majority of people doing that you're seeing?
A lot. Oh, yes. Well, people that we've brought in, yes, they keep their jobs because they're planned. They know from the time they signed to the time they got open, we're going to talk about an opening plan.
Mhm.
It's not like they have to sign on the bottom line on April 1st and be open by June 1st. No, they're going to sign on the bottom line by April 1st and be open by December. So they've got time to put all these things in place.
Okay, awesome. So now going back to the training, so they're working with the SSI, is that what you call them?
A franchise support team, FSS.
FSS. And so are they going to in-person training? Is it online training? What's this beyond just the site selection and the build out and the lease negotiation? What else are they doing?
You know, it's why we're a low-cost startup. It goes back to your low-cost startup. We don't need you to fly to Los Angeles like for 2 to 3 weeks and get a hotel. What we're going to do is we're going to do all this training with you, the first 4 stages of our training. The first stage, number 1, is basically 30 hours learning about Mathnasium. Then we go to stage 2 training, which is 4 half days with a Mathnasium instructor. After they're done with the Mathnasium instructor in stage 2, they go to stage 3 training, which is a deeper dive into the business. 40 hours on their own, right? Then the last stage, just about a month before they open up, they do their stage 4 training, and that's also 4 half days. So if you look at where I'm going with this, stages 1 and 3 are done on their own, at their own speed and pace, and stages 2 and 4 are done with a Mathnasium instructor online 4 half days. So that gives them plenty of time to adjust their work schedules and their schedules. Also in the franchise, which is very nice, included with your franchise fee, you can have 2 people get that training. So spouses, we had a lot of husband and wives that work this out, that are working from home, that both have jobs, that figure out a way to intermingle and get this done, right? But then comes the last part of the training, and this is where I find Mathnasium to be very successful. We're going to incorporate 4 stages of training done over 4 months, right? Just about a month before they grand opening, they're going to come to Los Angeles and work in a center for 3 days. During those 3 days, they're going to incorporate all 4 stages of what they've learned online and on their own, okay? And be able to take that. They're going to do assessments. They're going to do parent report cards or parent progress reports. We really believe in that relationship with the parent. You know, it's the parent that gets to vote who comes to Mathnasium, not the child. You know, that we've established a wonderful relationship with that parent. So we practice all that with these owners when they're in training for those 3 days. And we want to make sure they're able to incorporate everything they've learned from home.
Very cool. It's very robust training. I mean,
Very robust,
70
yes.
hours on your own, plus the total of 8 half days, plus in person. So anyone
Yep.
going through this training is going to be ready to run a center.
Well, I tell people this, if we can teach an 8-year-old how to divide an odd number, we can teach you how to run a franchise.
I like that. And so, all right, so they're trained up, they're ready for their grand opening, right? Who's next helping them to get to profitability? And then once that hits, who's helping them beyond that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, too, that we've been very blessed, and I've seen and witnessed and talked to many owners, right? That they start off with 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 kids, most likely. No guarantees, but there's always a chance that they're already going to have kids, because one of the things that we're going to have them do is do what we do best, which is our Mathnasium assessment. We didn't even touch on what makes Mathnasium in regards to what really separates us from the rest of them. But that assessment we can talk about in a few minutes if you ask me more questions. But what really is important here is they get open. They are following our system. And then what we'll do, probably a week to 10 days after they get open, we're going to send that franchise support person into the center and follow up to make sure they're doing everything that's proper in running the business, right? Once we feel and they feel that now they've gone through that initial process and they feel really good about what they're doing, and we feel comfortable that they can do this on their own, the next thing comes the field team, our franchise business consulting team, where they're going to have an FBC, a franchise business consultant, and a regional vice president, and a team of people working with them to help them for the next 5 years of their franchise agreement to make sure they're getting to profitability and scaling properly.
Awesome. And then how many franchisees to a franchise business consultant is there?
Good question here. I've got to say that, and I don't get really deep in the details, so I don't want to guess, but I'll give you my as best as I can do here is probably a typical regional has, maybe 10, 12 states because we have 4 regional VPs. So I would say 12 states and it breaks down. But let me say this to you, that we get to our franchisees twice a year.
You get to their locations in person twice a year?
Twice a year, absolutely.
Wow, I've never heard of that before.
Region twice a year, yes.
That's amazing. So, and this is full-time, right? They're not doing anything else but being business consultants for these franchises.
Oh, that's their full-time job. We hire these people full-time.
Okay, great. So I think that's another variable if people aren't asking, right? You hear a lot of franchises, oh, we have a franchise business consultant, but they also are doing, they're also working the franchise's corporate location, or they're doing all these other things. So it's important to have dedicated consultants there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I may, let me just touch on something. I mentioned it. One of the most important things that we have that separates us is our Mathnasium assessment tool. Every child that mom and dad consider Mathnasium, we always invite that child into Mathnasium for a free assessment at no cost or obligation, because we're able to measure 60 critical skills for that parent to be able to say, look, you want me to tell you why your son or your daughter's really struggling? Did you realize they don't understand the language? They don't understand decimals. They might not understand adding. They might not understand subtracting. They might not understand how to do fractions, right? I will tell you the biggest thing that a lot of our kids don't know on these assessments is how to divide odd numbers. That's one of the biggest things. So it's important for us to be able to show mom and dad, hey, here's an assessment chart. Your child has some symptoms. You brought them to the doctor. Here's the diagnosis, right? Because what we want mom and dad to do is to ask us the next question. Well, what can you do to help my child, right? And we have what is known as a prescriptive learning plan that's fully automated. So every franchisee knows that child's going to come in, and our system, which is called Radius, is going to put together a learning plan over a period of time. We like to tell mom and dad it's important. We're always going to under-promise and over-deliver. And it's not just a sprint. This is a marathon. So what's important here is we're going to be tracking and following up. So that's really what that visit is. Very important that field support person's doing, really analyzing the assessments and the amount of assessments and the how they're doing on those assessments. I've got to tell you, 80% of the people who come into Mathnasium on the first day sign their kids up the first day. 8 out of 10. Wow. It's a pretty big number.
Yeah, so let's go into the customer acquisition. We'll get to what comes before that. So they come in and they're taking this assessment, right? And then when you guys are prescribing the plan, are you giving them a 6-month plan? Are you giving them a 2-year plan? Like, what are the plans looking like, and what are people signing up for?
Another great question you ask, and I will tell you that the assessment chart, it's the prescriptive learning plan, has a date assigned, but we don't push the issue on completion. Remember, we're not forcing. We're trying to help the child by doing this learning experience. So by pushing them, we don't want to have a deadline on that. That's where we always want to underpromise and overdeliver. But we let mom and dad know a certain timeline, but it's based on a lot of different points, right? But like I said, if we have a child that we're making great progress with and mom and dad are happy, wonderful. If we have a situation where maybe the child just is not getting it because he might have a very rough or tough learning disability, we're letting the parent know, hey, this isn't working and there might be some other reasons why you might want to get some other things checked out. Mm-hmm. So that's why the community loves Mathnasium. And that's why people like what we do, because 75% of the time, if you go to Yelp and you go to Google and you check out what people say about Mathnasium, it's very positive.
Yeah, it sounds almost like a sport, right? Like the most important thing for a kid, if you want them to do it long term, is to make them love it, right? So if you're like, you better be scoring 5 goals this weekend, or you're doing laps, like they're not gonna like being there anymore, right? But if it's a
No.
fun experience, they're gonna get better
Yeah.
naturally.
And Josh, I will tell you, thank you for bringing this up. Remember I mentioned to you what's very important is the franchisee and somebody to be available to handle the phone calls to get them in for the free assessment. But when the child's in Mathnasium, we want them to stay, not because we want their money. We want them to stay because we want them to tell their friends. We want them to feel good about what they're doing. Hey, just because they've mastered 7th grade math, they got to master 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, right? So we do things inside our system that builds retention. Man, we've got student rewards programs, we've got Pi Days, we've got holidays. Everything we do is geared around the kids' motivation and feeling like, I want to go to Mathnasium today. It's nice when I talk to mom and dads that are looking to buy our franchise, they come back and say, you know what my child says every day? I love going to Mathnasium. We know we're doing our job properly.
Awesome. And so, do you know on average how long a child's staying with Mathnasium?
Oh, yeah. The average value of a child is about 10 months on average. So we've got kids that have been with us 3 to 5 years, and we've got kids that have been with us 6 months, 3 months, but on average about 10 months.
About 10 months. Awesome. Okay. And then something we haven't talked on before is the payment model, right? Which I thought is very
Yes.
cool. So, do you want to get into, so 10 months, how are they paying for it? Yeah, let's talk about the model a little bit.
Before I do that, one thing that's important here, a lot of times when I'm talking to a potential candidate, they say, well, how do I figure out what to charge? Well, first of all, Mathnasium is going to give them suggested retail pricing in their area. Another thing that we're going to make sure the franchisee understands is they're fully empowered. It's their franchise. They're going to decide if they're going to charge 350, 250, 400. You know what I'm saying? They're empowered. That's why we educate our owners to understand what the budgetary requirements are of the parent while the child is doing the assessment. We want to educate the parent. So that 10 months during that period of time that we talk about, that's just an average. So the amount of what we charge is definitely based on in the field. We let that owner be fully empowered.
Sure. But it's like a subscription model, right? It's kind of what I was getting at.
It's a membership model, subscription-based model. Mom and dad pay off their credit card or a checking or savings account once a month to Mathnasium.
Yeah.
And our system is sets up for that owner. They don't have to worry about that. It's all done for them.
Yeah, I think that's kind of I think that's another thing that stands out. I really like that, where they're coming in, it's like they're going to a gym, right? Their kids coming in as many times as they need a week. And they're paying for it without thinking about it. They're not getting charged every single time they walk in.
Yeah. And one other thing I will tell you, and this is something that I've learned as I've gone to training and talked to other owners. If a parent, remember I was telling you the situation, if we have a child that's just not grasping it, we immediately say, we don't want to take any more money. We want you to go get the child looked at. We're not out here. There's no contract. We want our reputation to be impeccable in the community. And we tell our franchisee candidate, is it really worth harassing somebody for $300 to make them angry to go tell 10 other people? No. And that's why we're successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the long-term game you guys are playing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're going to wrap up this kind of type of questions here with this last one, which is, what are you really selling is what I like to ask, right? So like, McDonald's isn't really selling hamburgers. They're really selling they're selling quality, right? You know exactly what you're getting in when you go to McDonald's. You can go to any McDonald's and you order a quarter pounder, you're getting the same thing, right? That's really kind of what they're selling. So for you guys, what is truly your product?
Our product is being able to let the child go to school, feel very comfortable to take testing without having a tutor or a Mathnasium instructor sitting next to them. For them to be able to take what we have trained them or what we've educated on based on their weaknesses and what we've helped improve their skills, that's exactly. We want them to love math. We want them to feel that math is achievable for them and they feel very, very comfortable and they can do it.
Yeah. So
that's what we're selling. Confidence.
Confidence. Yeah.
We're selling confidence in math to kids.
Yeah. And I think that's like, that's everything, right? When you have a kid who's confident in something, they just get so much better, right? School is they can't wait to go to school and be a top performer. So this is yeah, I like that. Okay, so now let's get into the market, right, and the competition a little bit. So in
Yep.
terms of market size on a like a per territory basis, right? What are the market sizes that franchisees are looking at getting into?
Well, first of all, let's define what really defines a mathnasium territory. We want to make sure that the income levels definitely can meet. So definitely where there's enough disposable income, because you can't go into an area where parents can't afford something like this. So that doesn't work. We're also looking for a certain amount of children that we know that they can get a certain percentage. They can have a very, very profitable business. And I think another thing that's very important is households, because the more households you have, the more marketing opportunities you have. So households, amount of children, and disposable income.
Got it. So you're looking at those three big KPIs. Um, and then so disposable income, I believe you said about 75 to $100,000 household income.
No, over $100,000
Over
income for sure.
over $100,000 household income. Okay. And then from the growth of the market, right? Because we always hear about, oh, people are having less and less kids, right? So maybe Mathnasium's been a great business for the last 20 years. How does the next 20 years look like?
Yeah. I like that question, and here's why. We sell a protected territory. So when a person buys a franchise from us, they have a protected territory that meets the demographic information I gave you. I'm not going to mention names, but you and I both know that there are certain franchises that have one on every corner. Well, that's really sometimes is not very healthy. So we want to make sure that our owners have a healthy territory, one center per territory. One center per territory. Here's the other thing. If we have a territory and we have a great owner, and let's say we're able, based on our information and based on what we're finding from our field team, that we're only touching 40% of that territory, we'll ask the owner to possibly split up the territory and open up another center, because we want to make sure, and we're able to show that owner, do you realize that you're missing 50 to 60% of this other side, right? And the franchisee goes, I didn't realize that. And most likely they'll open up another center. Over the next 5, 10, 20 years, this business is going to be more and more important to people. Because if you really think about it, as we talk about AI, right? Artificial intelligence. A lot of people say, well, Marty, how is that going to affect Mathnasium? I say, it's really not going to affect Mathnasium, because here's why. You still need a human being, you still need a human to program, but you can't put a computer in front of a child and give that same love and that same passion and that same overview that a human being can give a child. So I don't even worry about artificial intelligence for our next 20 years.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I took that as for granted there, that we saw clearly that when learning went online during the pandemic, the kids test scores plummeted, right? So like you have to teach kids in person, right? Like that's like not a question, I feel like, at this point. I guess the bigger question was like, are you looking at KPIs such as like the birth rates, right? That's what I'm worried about. Like, hey, 10 years from now, if I'm in a place where the average person's having 1.2 kids instead of 2.1 kids, is that something I need to be worried about?
No, because here's why. Let's face facts. Because you look at our business model, I know can't predict how many kids are going to be raised and born in the next 20 years, but I can tell you this, that nothing's going to change in regards to the way we teach in the schools. When you have one teacher to 30 kids, and that teacher doesn't know if the kid has dyslexia, ADHD, or ADD, as long as there's kids that go to school, there's going to be Mathnasium, because there's always going to be that percentage of kids that just can't grasp it in there, and they can't get it from the teacher. And they're got to get it from somebody else. And that's why we stand to be that group and to be that company, because we know that what we're doing and the investment that we have. One of the things that I will let you know is we're owned by one of the largest private equity firms in the country, named Roar Capital, that owns Mathnasium and a lot of the top franchises in the world. So we have a lot of investment power. And these guys are very, very good at making sure that we're running our business properly. I don't think anybody sitting here worried about 20 years, because we know that this business model. One last thing, we started 20 years ago, right? 2000, and we're still growing at double digits. The birth rates, we know that they continue to decline. But in regards to investments for children, mom and dads are going to always make that investment in the children. That's why I go back to the recession resistant business. When things are tough and things are not great, mom and dad ain't cutting back on the kids.
Yeah, because that's the future, right? Like, you're gonna sell your kid's future for 2 years? Like, I don't think so. Okay.
Yeah.
And then last part on this is how do you situate yourself within the broader tutoring space, right? So you've got Sylvan, you've got Kumon, you've got all these other guys. You have the random dude on Facebook Marketplace, right? Like, how do you see yourselves positioned within the marketplace, and like what person is choosing you over these other ones? And is it just marketing,
Yeah.
or is it like what is it?
Well, if you were to go, Josh, if you had a child and you were going to, your child was struggling at math and you went to Google and you typed in my child struggling at math and you saw Mathnasium pop up, what's the first thing you're going to think about? This must be a place for math, right? If you see something like Kumon come up, you might not know what that is, or you might not know what Sylvan Learning Center is in the competition standpoint, but you know what we stand for is math, right? That separates us out is we're fully focused purely on math. We're not worried about reading at this point. We're not worried about science at this point. We're worried about math. 2 + 2 in Detroit, Michigan is the same thing it is in Paris, France, right? 5 × 5 is 25 in California, as it is in Columbia, South Carolina, or Columbia, in South America. And my point to that is math is a universal language. You got to use it wherever you go. So, our competitors are great. They have a great business model, but our model is math. And that's where we want to be the best. We don't need to be the best at 2 things. We need to be the best at 1 thing.
Yeah, so it's really the niche, right? It's like
That's
you
right.
stand out in the math category. Okay.
In the niche. That's right.
Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper now into the franchisee support and performance. So we talked pretty extensively about the support. Can you talk a little bit? I like the Rourke. I think that's a good way. Like, so what is Rourke brought, I believe 3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe. What have they brought to this system that's pushed it forward?
I'm going to say it to you this way. Like I told you, I have 35 years in the franchise world. My first bout with franchising was at Jackson Hewitt. We had an entrepreneur named John Hewitt. John built a great company. He had great things that he brought, electronic filing. He brought fast refunds. But at the end of the day, when we sold out to another company, we had a new management style. We were able to get new tools and things of that nature. So Mathnasium was acquired, I think, about 3 years ago. And Mathnasium was acquired because Rourke had Mathnasium on their screen for about 10 years before they bought it. And the reason they pulled the trigger was, like I told you, 75% of the time, the information they read about the parents and what the results they were getting from the kids, that's what made them to buy the business, right? So since they bought the business, right, they have brought in a complete management team. We have a gentleman named Tyler Segro, who's our chief executive officer. He has taken our business, building data warehouses, brought in a management team. My boss, Kevin Shen, he is our chief development officer. He has his education and has his master's from Wharton. We just brought in a lady named Kristen Gedke, who worked for Papa John's. I mean, these are big brands. So we are building a team of executives that have been in the franchise industry. And Rourke, they're just there as a support mechanism. They're supporting us and giving us feedback and more information. And what we're doing is our team is building internally, and we're bringing in better people. Look, they brought me in. That should tell you something. I mean, I got 35 years of experience, and I'll tell you right now, they're not looking for amateurs. They're looking for veterans. And everything that we do, from our education team with John Bianchetti, with his education team, and Harmony and her team, and Amy with her integration team, and our regional team, we got a real strong team here. Anybody that really is looking for a full diversified business with great support and leadership, it's Mathnasium.
Awesome. So they've brought just a higher caliber of person, probably more data to it, a little more professional. And for those listening who haven't heard of Rourke, they've been in franchising with the original private equity companies. They've got a good name. I would look them up. Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about the software. We're talking about franchisee support. Let's go into the software. You guys have a really, I mean, one of the most robust systems I've seen. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, our system's called Radius. Let's talk about that first, too. The lady that runs it, name is Ellie Beck. She just does a wonderful job. Here's what I want to talk about Radius. We have 99.9% of our system is owner operated. We have 4 company-owned stores throughout the world, right? We're not out there to compete against our franchisees. We use our centers as sort of laboratories. We use them as trying to train our owners when they come to training. Hey, would this work before we roll it out to the system or not? That's what we do here, right? So what's very important here to understand that our program Radius is internally built. We do not outsource it. It does not leave the 4 walls of Los Angeles because we don't want anyone to have access to it. When you leave the franchise system, man, you're turning back that login and password. You're not getting back in. That system is got 20 years of algorithms and data. You know, in that software, if let's say I wake up, I need to go out and I want to hop on Eagle Elementary School in Farmington Hills, Michigan, and I want to do a promotion. So I go to Radius and I go to keyword and I type in, I want to do a promotion with an elementary school. Radius is going to give me a list of options of different type of programs that I can do, right? So I download the idea, I download the scripts, I download the materials that I'm going to need. And let's say I have a question, call my field team and say, I'm about ready to go and talk to the principal at the school. He's invited me in for a meeting, right? Radius is going to give him all that information, what he needs to take with him. So that's important. Another thing that's from an advertising standpoint, but he's also able to analyze and look at past data of what we need to do in these schools. So the algorithms and data are fed into Radius. Another thing that Radius does very well, remember I talked to you about that assessment?
Yep.
That assessment is never touched by a human being, Josh. That assessment is not touched by a human being because we do not want that assessment that the kids do to have any type of, I'm trying to think of the right
Bias
word
or
here.
anything.
Bias, yeah, thank you. We don't want to have any bias here. So it goes right into Radius. And Radius takes the data and information and comes out with that assessment chart and the prescriptive learning plan. So it's available right there in the hands of the owner or the center director when they're talking to mom and dad. So from a standpoint of marketing and a standpoint of the assessment, Radius is there. Now, the other thing it's there, it stores all of your materials. You know about your clients, you know how much money you got coming in. Now, we do tell people that you're going to have to probably have a QuickBooks to do your own paychecks and things of that nature, but it's able to tabulate the hours, P&Ls, budgets, etc. So basically, Radius is a turnkey CRM that our owners can have as a franchisee that they can use to benefit themselves. And they also have ongoing field support if they have questions.
So let me just get a recap. So it helps with marketing. It helps with tracking who's in the center. It helps with the actual execution of the math protocol that you guys have. It helps with managing any financials and things like that, although you will need QuickBooks. It sounds like it does pretty much everything. Is there
one other thing I didn't touch on? You got to be able to have your curriculum. You're buying an education center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're buying an education center with the understanding you're going to need math curriculum. So all of that information is downloaded and stored in Radius. So one thing I do want to say, when the child comes in, remember we talked about the prescriptive learning plan? When the child comes in for his first day, Radius has already determined what the child's going to learn for the day. And Radius sends that learning plan to the printer. So the takes it off of the printer and sits down with the child. Doesn't need to go back to Radius and doesn't need to go back to the owner because they already know what they're going to teach for the day. So Radius does that.
That's so interesting. My wife and I own a kids dance business, right?
You own what?
A kids dance franchise.
Okay.
And there's prep. There's some prep that has to go on before, like designing the lesson plan for that month and whatever, right? And so, but it's the same for all kids. They all do the same dances. So when I was watching these videos, I'm like, how are these tutors spending time? Like, how much money are you paying the tutor teaching and how much are you paying prep? Because each kid needs their own specific prep. Because to me, that I'm just like, man, those are just hours getting burned that you're not making any revenue. But what you're saying is that the software does it.
Oh my God, great! You're throwing me a softball here. When little Johnny comes for his learning plan for the day, the instructor that we've helped. Well, let's do this. You're hiring high school, college, retirees, part-time employees, right? You do not need a license to work at Mathnasium as an instructor. You don't need to be a teacher. We do want you to have some math skills. And one of the things that Radius does a very, very good job of is when we have that, we believe, right candidate to come work for us, guess what we give that potential employee, we give them an assessment. So we know if that employee is the real deal and has enough math skills where we can teach them the Mathnasium method, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't want to spend a lot of time with somebody we think might be good. We want to spend time with somebody we know will be good. Mm-hmm. So Mathnasium's assessment for employees is on Radius. The employees that work for us, like I said, part-time. They don't have to get their hands dirty. They don't have to smell like food. They don't have to worry about cutting a finger or knife. Also, what's beautiful about our franchise is you're open 15 hours a week for education, right? You're open 15 hours a week. So the kids, 5 days a week, a lot of employees, colleges and high school kids, they don't have to work on the weekends. They can spend time studying or being with their friends and doing other things. That's why, in regards to hiring people, we're always hiring. We're always looking to better our staff. But it's really nice is we have an attractive model for people that have some math skills.
Yeah, and then if you have this program, if someone quits, their schedule changes for the next semester, whatever, and a new person comes in, they don't need a bunch of time of like, okay, let me pick up and understand where this kid is in his curriculum, because it's all in Radius. So the next guy just comes in and just keeps going.
That's it. And you know what? Thank you for bringing that up, because here's the other thing. We have what is known as Mathnasium at home. Now, it's a very, very small part of our business. But what Mathnasium does, if mom and dad are busy for the day and they can't get little Johnny to the center, or maybe the kid's, he's got sniffles and they don't want to get him around other kids, the kid has a login and password. He can go right directly to his center on a camera and have a virtual real-time class with his students, right? That builds such an attractive model for mom and dads that are looking for value, that are signing their kids up. You mean if I can't make it in for the day, or let's say I'm in another country with my kids, or during the summertime, I want my kids to be doing some things at home, they can log in anywhere if we're on vacation? Absolutely. So Mathnasium at home is another graded value that we offer the parents. That's the key. We want to offer mom and dads value, but we also want to offer results.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great selling tool as well, right? Even if they use it or not, is like, oh, well, I don't know if I could bring them to the center enough to make it worth, $300 a month. Well, no problem. You don't have to, right? So that's kind of interesting that you guys have that. Okay. So I always like to ask this, what makes guys fail, right? And like because I'm sure you have franchisees that go out of business. So what is it that's making these people fail?
Okay, your question is what makes the difference between a successful owner and one that's not successful?
So I think those are two different answers. A person who's like middle of the pack and people who are like really successful versus middle of the pack and a person who like straight up, they just fail at the franchise.
Yeah. I'm not going to give you a percentage because I'm not allowed to, but I will say this to you, that we are well below the standards of the IFA typically says a mature system usually lose about 10% a year. We're well below that. Let me explain to you why we're well below that. Number one, you have rent, payroll, and royalties. Those are your major cost, 3 expenses, right? Your rent is what your rent is. Your royalty is variable, and your payroll is very minimal because you're open part-time. So a lot of times people fail in our businesses. They get into something and they really thought this is what they wanted to do, but it didn't end up working out for them. But we have a solution for that person. Let's say that person did come into our system and it just wasn't working out for them. Well, a lot of franchise companies would say, hey, you know what, Josh, why don't you reach out to a broker, a business broker, and go ahead and put that business up for sale and sell it. Oh, I can do that? Yeah. Well, that's not the way we operate. Mathnasium's going to say, look, Josh, we're sorry it's not working out. We've done everything we can. Why don't you go ahead and put it up for sale, and we'll have our franchise development team sell it for you. No cost. I mean, you just got to pay your transfer fee. We want to minimize that risk to the owner. One thing I do want to say is if people are listening to this and really understand franchising, that franchise disclosure document has 22 sections, and one of those sections is litigation. We have no litigation. Nobody's ever sued us, and we've never sued anybody because that's not what we're in business for.
Yeah, which is crazy to think of. You have 1,000 centers and you've been around for 20 years and you have no litigation.
Yeah, but you have to understand that's why the brand is successful. That's what we're preaching. We're preaching. Remember what I said. If the kid is the first important thing that you're talking about, helping and making a difference, that's what Mathnasium wants to do for the entrepreneur. We want to make a difference for that entrepreneur.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that alone just shows how much you care about the franchisees, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Let's get into a little bit more about the marketing and what you do for the franchisees. So how do you, we know what happens when they come in. They take the assessment, right? How do you get them in?
Okay. Well, first of all, if I was talking to a prospective franchisee, the first thing I like to tell them is, I don't need you to be a marketing expert. I don't need you to be a sales expert. I want you to be a community person. I want you to be involved in your community, because Mathnasium carries the heavy lifting when it comes to the national, the regional, and the local marketing. And when it comes to the social media, we handle that. First of all, we don't do any advertising during Sesame Street on TV or Peppa Pig, because we know the kids are watching it, not the parents. So we're spending our marketing dollars when we know that our target audience of parent and demographic is watching their shows, whether it be Yellowstone, whether it be Oklahoma Sheriff, whatever different types of shows that are on TV, we're marketing. So you as an owner, you don't have to worry about that. The next part is the regional marketing. You're taking a national brand and you're pushing it down to a regional level, right? And the message is different. A national brand message is totally different than a regional message in a way. But we want to take that message and we want to instill that into social media, into the local access, right? So we do those things and we come into the field twice a year, like I told you, and we're working with our owners from a regional marketing standpoint to make sure we're doing best practices. What can we do better? How can we drive more assessments? How can we reach out to the schools? Hey, Josh, you're an owner. What are you doing at your center? You're growing at 20%. Hey, Frank, what are you doing at your center? You're growing at 10%. Hey, Jane, what are you doing at your center? We get the owners together, man. We're creating that bond and relationship and the power of the brand, right? But the other thing that we do is we give our franchisees things that they can do inside the community, in their territory. We're going to teach them how to reach out to the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. We're going to teach them how to reach out to the schools. We're going to show the potential franchisee every opportunity they have to bring people into their centers. Then I'm going to go one step further. So you've got the national, you've got the regional, you've got the local, you've got the community, right? But let me ask you another question. What are you doing inside those four walls where you have those kids, right? Well, we've got several referral programs. And we have several things that we do, like a pie day or a math night, where we're bringing kids into our center. So we're very in tune. We're very in tune to what we're doing. One thing I will tell you, and I've learned this from one of our regional vice presidents, Ross. Ross always told me, Marty, Mathnasium's not a commodity. Ross he's a regional VP. He owned Domino's franchises, and he also worked for one of our competitors. But one of the things he taught me was that we're not a commodity. We're a word of mouth business. So you've got to be out there. When you're hungry, you're going to go eat. But when a kid needs help, we've got to get to the kid. We've got to get to the child. They got to know who we are. So we're doing all those things to make sure we're externally reaching to those parents.
Yeah, and that takes such a big weight off the franchisee, right? So if you're handling like the social media, you're handling the ads, you're handling the marketing, that allows them, it really sounds like their focus is two things. It's the local outbound reach and building the team,
Yep.
right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if they had a center director, that director is really in charge of overseeing the instructors. And so the owner's main job is the outreach. Would that be right?
Well, yes and no, because one of the things what separates us from some other brands, let's say, Josh, you're the franchisee of a Mathnasium in your hometown, and I come work for you as a instructor, and then you really realize, Marty, you got good management skills. I'm going to promote you to be a center director. And then I'm going to step back as the owner and be the owner. Well, guess what? Mathnasium is going to train me how to be a center director. Josh, you are too. But Mathnasium, for free, at no cost to the owner, we're going to teach Marty Mazer how to be a center director, which is a very, very big plus to anybody that's getting into our system. That's why we can help that absentee kind of owner that still wants to maintain a job. We're going to train that center director for them at no cost.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're going to have someone that you know has been trained to brand standards running the
That's right. Hey,
business.
you're dealing with kids.
Yeah.
You've got cameras, you've got security, you're doing background checks. Everything that we teach the owners is to protect that child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's nice too, I've found, is in this type of business is that the people who apply, it's a little bit of passion as well, where they either love the thing that they're doing or they love kids. And so it just brings I feel like a slightly better candidate. That's they're not just doing it for money, right? They're doing it for something else.
Josh, I'd like to share a quick story with you today. I don't think my friend would at all complain that I mentioned him, but I'm going to do it anyways. I guess he can give me a black eye later. But I lived in Dallas, Texas for 20 years, and I was very fortunate to, I'm an avid golfer, and my club introduced me to a wonderful young man that everybody's younger than me, but introduced me to a young man to join our group, right? And I've been a friend of this guy for at least probably going on eight years, right? And he came to me one day and he says, Marty, I'm not going to be playing football professionally much longer. I've got to start thinking about what I want to do. He happened to play for the Dallas Cowboys. He was their field goal kicker. And then he was also the field goal kicker for the Rams. Brett Maher is his name. And Brett came to me and he said, my wife's a teacher. This would be a great business that I think my wife and I could do very well in, right? And I said, well, Brett, I don't want to bring any friends in. I don't want to bring any relatives. I haven't done it. But you know what? If you really, really want to do something like this, I want you to go through all of the due diligence. I want you to talk to owners. I want you to look at the model. I don't want you to do anything until you're ready. And when he told me I'm ready to come to Discovery Day and then he became an owner, he's doing wonderful in Lincoln, Nebraska right now. He owns a Mathnasium with his wife and he's doing well, but he loves the business. To your point, somebody that has something that they want to build, a retirement vehicle, or they want to supplement their income, or they're looking for something to say that they're proud of doing, that's why somebody looks at a Mathnasium franchise.
Yeah. Awesome. And I was always talking about the employees, right? I feel like it's on both sides of the equation.
Absolutely. But it's contagious.
Yeah.
If you have an owner, remember the first thing is if I talk to somebody at the beginning and all they care about is how they want to make money, it's really not going to be a good fit. If they tell me I want to help kids and they tell me a story about their kids getting help at Mathnasium or going to a learning center and doing well, that's a great start because that's the message they're going to instill in their center. What a more powerful, Joshua, what could be more powerful than you sitting on the other end of the table and saying, you know what? My child went to Mathnasium for 3 years, made great progress. And you know what? I decided to be a business owner and I bought one of these franchises. And now I'm asking you to spend a certain amount of money per month to help your child. What powerful message can you send in that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That shows you believe in it. You really believe in it.
That's exactly right.
Cool. Okay. But it's not the first thing that people should be asking about. They should be there because it's passion, but the numbers are important. Right.
Absolutely.
And so
the numbers are there.
Yeah.
The numbers are there. Item 19 is there. And we're very proud of our franchise disclosure document. We have our new one coming out here in the next 23 days. It's going to be better than the one we have now.
That's awesome. And I'm gonna touch on a couple of things. This is the 2024 Mathnasium FDD from their item 19. They're showing their P&L has operating profit in the 30+%, right, for their average. So with average revenue across the entire system of 360K, right? You guys can do the math, where that's looking at pretty good on a per store basis for a 150,000 on the high end investment, right? Now, one thing that I thought was really interesting that I'd like you to talk about is the people who own multiple, because I like that you break it up down by people who own 1, people who own 3 to 5, people who own more than 6. The trajectory, it kind of goes up, right? So why are people who own more, why are they making more per store? What's the cause of that? Because you would think, Well, now they have directors running it, so it wouldn't be run as
Yep.
well, but it seems to be the opposite. So what's kind of going on there?
It's like a virus. It's contagious. What happens is you're building a team. You're building a team, and that team is meeting with the other team, and they're competitive with each other. You know, we have a franchisee that's got 60 centers. How does he manage 60? He's a great owner. He's got a team under him. And the success of every owner is the team. At the end of the day, every person that says they're successful, well, guess what? They're successful because of the people that work for them. No doubt. And what happens is when you have a center, I tell people one franchise will make you a great income the rest of your life, right? But if you want to buy multiples and you want to have more income, follow the system, wait for that regional team to prove you to become expandable, because we're just not going to let you expand. We want to make sure you're good in the system, where a lot of franchises, all they want is that extra franchise fee. That's not what we are and who we are. And we're going to monitor the progress, right? You're going to get a kick out of this. Every franchisee that wants to expand, do you know what we make them do? We make them provide their financial statement again and take a background check. Even though they've been in the system and we know they passed the first time, that's our criteria. If you stay and follow it's like this. First things need to always be done. Second things need to be done not at all. First things first, and second things not at all. And that's the process we go through. We focus on what our criteria is of success, and that is, if you're going to grow to be a multiple center owner, you got to prove to us that you can run one right and that you can build a team before we're going to let you go again. That's the key. That's the answer. It's not because we're like these magicians and we're creating all these unbelievable tutors and instructors in our system. It's not that at all. What it is our Mathnasium system. You know what? I heard when I came, I sort of chuckled the first day I came to a discovery day. One of the executives said, if you want to put a frozen yogurt machine in your franchise, don't do it. We're not going to approve it. And I said, okay, I understand why, but why not? I wanted to know why. He goes, because think about it. If you bring a frozen yogurt into a Mathnasium, now you've welcomed the health department into your center. Didn't think of it that way. But you see, we've been in business 20 years. We know the mistakes that we've made in the past, and we're not going to let that happen again. We're a very educated system.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to two things, right? First, speaks to how you've really thought, like, the system has been thought out, right? And so the kind of person that you need is a person who's just going to come in and do stuff, right? So if you're on the more entrepreneurial side as a listener or whatever, right, that there's franchises with 10 locations where you can go and you can go nuts and you can test things out and give feedback, but that's not what this is, right? If that's who you want to be, that this isn't the right fit for you. But
Nope.
if you want to come in and execute on proven systems, like this is. Okay. So we know that there aren't a ton of locations left. I think there's just about 100 left in the country.
Oh, there's more than 100 territories left. But like I said, we're in certain areas of the country, we're sold out. But we've got a couple of hundred areas still open out there. We know we've got a good 2 to 3 years of growth still ahead of us.
Okay, so a couple hundred. The other way to grow, of course, is acquisitions of existing territories, right? So in the FDD, you had about 93 transfers, I believe is what the number was, which is like 10% of all locations. So was this, what was the split of them selling to just new people versus franchisees buying them up? Do you know what that split looked like?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, great question too. You ask great questions here, Josh. In territories where we don't have a very dense population of owners, most likely we're going to bring in new franchisees. Let me challenge you. If you had a franchise in Northern California, right? And you wanted to sell your franchise, you'd probably have 20 buyers and they're all franchisees. We don't have to worry about posting things on Biz Buy Sell for certain areas of the country. Dallas, Texas, Houston, San Antonio, we're sold out. So if you open and you're going to eventually retire and sell your business, you got 20 customers to buy it.
Yeah. So that's that. I mean, I think that's good for if you're on the exit side, right? Where you want to get a good price for it and you have buyers to find it quickly. But also from the other side, where if you're just coming in the system and you want to become the next guy with 10, 20, 30 locations, hey, there are people around you to sell and they're selling to franchisees first, is what it sounds like.
Yeah. I want to give you a winning formula that I see that's happening in the franchise industry right now. as I talk to people from private equity, or I'm talking to franchise brokers, like FranServe or IFPG, I think the best model, and I'm hearing it more and more, is get into that first center, buy that first franchise, right? Not an existing, buy that first territory, open that first territory, put your own fingerprints in that territory, right? Put your own love and passion into that center, right? Then once you learn, and once you're profitable, and once you feel good about everything in place, then start looking at acquisition of cash flow. Start looking at buying out other owners.
Yeah.
And if you're in a territory where there's not very many owners, then open up another franchise. But we have certain areas of the country that's going to guarantee future success if they buy ownership now, because eventually when it is sold out, the value of their franchise goes up, because if supply and demand, there's no supply and a lot of demand, then their price is going to go up in their center and their value. But as a potential franchisee that wants to expand out, they're going to buy up cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that can't be like understated of doing the
Not
first
here
one
it is,
yourself.
not in this brand. We're a mature brand. We've got owners that are always continually buying out owners.
Yeah. Very cool. Do you have any private equity at the franchisee side as well?
Yeah. God, man. Well, we have, let me give you one of our largest owners, Mo Khalil. He just struck a deal with a private equity group. It's public information on Google. They're buying in, and they're funding 30 to 40 more units with him.
Wow.
We just brought a couple of real good guys into Minnesota that are very strong financial guys that just bought 9 resales. We have another gentleman that just came in on the West Coast that came from the same Wharton Business School that my boss Kevin came from. He just bought 3 to 5 centers, right? So we're seeing this starting to rupture. But I will tell you what happened. When those events happen, guess what? I just did an area development deal with 5 new centers from an existing owner that already had 5 centers, because they don't want to lose out on the opportunity. So yes, and we're always getting calls from private equity groups that want to buy cash flow. They want to buy in with our larger owners and expand out. But what's happened too, in some situations, it's the territories just aren't there.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, I think that's like smart money, right? So for any doubt of who's coming in these, if you see, private equity starting to get into on the franchisee side, it's almost like a virtuous circle, right? Where like the guys that the private equity at the top is bringing all this experience, they're driving profitability at the bottom. Those at the bottom are essentially now they're standing shoulder to shoulder with you, and they're also sharing their lessons that they're learning with the capital that they're bringing. So that's very positive.
Josh, the smartest people in the world are these guys that work on Wall Street. They're private equity. They're doing analysis all day long. Everything's about analyzing, right? What does that tell you about our brand when you have people that are coming in and have analyzed our brand, like a company like Rourke, and these private equity guys and people coming from Wharton or Harvard Business Schools that want to buy into our franchise? That pretty much, like I said, I've been in 10 brands. I've never seen this.
Yeah, I think it's amazing.
Yeah. It's a great, like I said, math is the universal language of the world. People know that. We're number 40. As you see what's saying on the news, we're very low ranked. And if we don't really get it together, we're going to continue that way. Mathnasium's trying to make a difference.
Awesome. Okay. So let's wrap it up here with the future, right? So what does the future of the franchise look like? Are there any big changes on the horizon? Any major developments? Like what is the future of this brand hold?
Well, of course, I'm not on the executive team. I'm a executive franchise development person, but I'm very fortunate. 2 Mondays a month, I go to Los Angeles. I sit in discovery days, and I get a chance to sit with candidates. And our CEO, Tyler, he answers questions to the group. And like he'll talk about is, we're working on different things. Anything that this company does is going to be done properly. We're not just going to we're not going to do ready, fire, aim. We're going to do ready, aim, fire. So any products and things that we're going to add to the future of our brand, it's going to be tested, because we don't want to put it in a situation where our franchisees have to spend a lot more additional money to have those products and services. Right now, we're growing at double digits right now, just doing math. But the future of this company, with a guy like Tyler running it, with his team and who he's got behind, to me, it's unstoppable. I mean, we've got continued growth, a franchise business with very few failures, and we have owners that are wanting to expand. That to me is a winning formula. I mean, you can't add any more of a dimension, right? You can't add any more of a dimension to that in a brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You guys have all the telltale signs. They say success isn't obvious,
Absolutely.
but it leaves clues, right? And
Yep.
all the clues
Yep.
are there. Okay. Very cool. Well, I appreciate it, Marty. If anyone's interested in learning more about Mathnasium, please reach out to me. I'll get with Marty to check to see if your territory's available. If it is, you'll speak with him. You'll be able to get the latest FTD when it comes out here in the next month or so. You'll be able to speak with franchisees. There's nothing will be hidden once you enter this process to make sure it's a good fit for you and you're a good fit for them. So so that's it. Any parting shots here, Marty?
Josh, thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure talking with you. Like I say, Mathnasium, the franchise, is a group of 1,000 operators out there that love what they're doing every day, and they're just here to help kids. And by helping kids, they're writing their own paychecks.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Marty. I appreciate you being here. And
Thank you.
hopefully we'll get some of these listeners who are interested in speaking to you here soon.
Thank you, Josh.